Hello, I'm Amy Muller, co-founder and director of community education at Get Satisfaction. Welcome to Community College. Today we're going to chat briefly about the different archetypes of community members. We're going to take a look at the different personality types that crop up in online communities and discuss which ones can be persuaded, which ones can help us out, and which ones are best avoided altogether. I've been working in online community management for over 4 years now. With over 46,000 communities by last count in the Get Satisfaction network, we see a lot of community activity. We found that being able to recognize personality types at a glance is essential. Why is this so? Because you're communicating with an overwhelming crush of people and you don't have a lot of time to think about it. So pattern matching helps you move quickly and hopefully effectively. It helps you identify the champions and the potential troublemakers. It makes you aware of opportunities and how to make the most of them, as well as risks and how to best manage them. I'm sure many of you have heard of Gartner's 4 levels of community engagement. They break the community up into 4 roles: creators, contributors, opportunists, and lurkers, and have identified percentages for each. They assert that a few will be creators, providing original content. A larger group are contributors who add to the conversation but don't initiate it. Opportunists can further contributions but don't go out of their way to do so. And the majority of folks are lurkers, who are essentially spectators, ringing in at a whopping 80% and up. And then there's the older 99-1 rule, which posits that in most online communities, 90% of users are lurkers who never contribute, 9% of users contribute a little, and 1% of users account for almost all the action. This is interesting data to be aware of and can help when understanding your community analytics for reporting purposes, but it doesn't really help you in the day-to-day of managing the variety of folks that are participating in your community. It's also important to remember that customer communities can be quite different from other types of communities. In most cases, the people who come to customer communities are there to get help, learn about how to use a product or service, or give feedback, not necessarily just to hang out and gab, at least not at first. These communities are geared towards people getting results and resolution. They're goal-oriented. As a result, we've assembled our own archetypes that are somewhat unique to our customer community and those that we see on Get Satisfaction. Out of necessity, we've learned to always be on the lookout for those people who might become champions of the brand or those who might be potential trolls. We've learned to always be aware of people who might be swinging one way or the other so we can step in and help them along or escort them to the door. First up, the hall monitor, aka the PC police. These are the people who actually read the terms and conditions. While sometimes difficult, they often admit as much themselves, their opinion can be extremely valuable. Ask for it. Let them know you value it. They can be annoying, but are good to have around, as long as you don't have too many of them. The hall monitor wants things to be rigidly organized, although sometimes in a seemingly arbitrary way. They can sometimes exert a politically correct attitude that stifles conversation. Again, show respect, but try to keep the conversation flowing and inject lightheartedness into the conversation as the antidote to the overly serious. The axe grinder. The axe grinder doesn't usually want to stick around. They just dropped in to say, "You suck," and hit the road. For example, this user, whose username was even designed to be a complaint. These folks can be prodigious cross-posters as well. Watch out, because they may run through and litter conversations with their cut-and-paste screed. For instance, this person only seems to want to rile up everyone for a class action lawsuit against PayPal. He often cross-posts in a variety of topics, dropping his aboutpaypal.org link. With these folks, show a sincere response. Ask them to clarify. If they never respond to you, you've shown that you cared, you tried, but they wouldn't take you up on the offer of sincere help. This speaks volume about your willingness to engage and their lack of engagement, as well as their intention in your community. If they don't respond to multiple requests, consider burying their topic. Follow them via RSS, which is available on Get Satisfaction, or by following their topics. As company representatives, we should all be open to hearing our customers' complaints and allowing them to express themselves. However, there is a line. We don't want anyone to harass employees or other customers, so follow the conversation and be ready to respond. You may find that simply being sincere in your response will turn an axe grinder around. Most of the time, they just want to be heard and want an opportunity to express their frustration. If you feel there's hope for turning the situation around, but that it may require higher level input, you might want to consider enacting your escalation path. Bring in someone from high up in your organization to respond. Customers are always really impressed, for instance, when the CEO steps in and replies to them. Next up, the cheerleader. This is the counterpart to the axe grinder. They're the person that when being held up at gunpoint will compliment the gunman's shoes. The cheerleader usually just wanted to let you know how awesome you guys are. Well, the praise topic type and get satisfaction probably won't lead to a lot of in-depth conversation. It feels great to get praise. An example of a cheerleader is one of our champs, Nathan. He's always sure to contribute his share of praise. Nothing to do with cheerleaders, but thank them and encourage them to continue providing feedback. If, like Nathan, they also reply to other customers in helpful ways, they may be a good candidate for a champ badge. When you have cheerleaders sharing praise in your community, you can use our live topic widget to set up a testimonial stream on your site. If you're getting a lot of praise, you're probably doing something right, so why not advertise it? You can also use our overheard feature to pull in conversations from Twitter and say thank you for the kind words. Stalkers are usually a subcategory of troll. They will often obscure their identity and even change it constantly or create multiple identities to make you think they're someone else. Widgetbox had a customer who rapidly created 6 accounts just to harass employees, using his various accounts to play off each other. One of the employees suspected this person might be someone from previous experiences and alerted us to his behavior, which lined up to our own suspicions, and he was quickly shut down. They often have a personal agenda against a company or an employee and will do what they can to tear them down. You can try offline communication, but remember, with these folks, anything you communicate offline will most likely be put back online by the troll as ammunition. As I've suggested in the past about trolls in general, don't get pulled into the black hole of debate with them. The narcissist. Something about your product or service turns them on and they take a deep dive. They share a lot of ideas and suggestions, sometimes too many, in a short amount of time. At first blush, they may even appear to be a sage, which we'll talk about later, but don't be fooled. With the narcissist, it's really all about them. They tend to be a hot flame that burns brightly but then burns out, particularly when they find that you're not immediately implementing their 101 suggestions to improve your product. Their level of engagement and the amount of detail they go into is not sustainable for the long haul. They also often are not usually big picture people. They like to focus on one detail of your product they feel strongly about. They may have tunnel vision and refuse to see the reasons you have for not offering something as part of your product or service. We had a user a while back who was prolific for several months. He bombarded us with feature suggestions, often in exhaustive detail, as you can see here. We received several topic posts from him nearly every day. He certainly had some great suggestions, but also many that were so narrow in their focus and did not take into account the bigger picture of our system as a whole. We engaged with him, but as we were already in the midst of a development cycle and some other priorities, we didn't immediately implement his ideas. And then one day he was gone. The point maker, aka the know-it-all. Point makers may at times seem confrontational, but let's be honest, they wouldn't be here if they didn't care about your company and its products. Take them seriously, even when they are seriously overdoing it. They may use the Me Too functions obsessively and add a whole lot of +1 to the conversation. They love to point out when you're wrong, or you haven't done enough, or you haven't done it the way they think you should. Swallow your pride and admit when they're right. Let them know they certainly do have a good point. Point makers are naturally good at debating, even if they're coming from an inflexible, biased position. It may not be worth it to get deep down into the details with them. Just acknowledge their point, make sure they feel heard, and move on. The sage. Sometimes the sage shows up one day and you recognize them as such because they say it better than you could say it. They get what you're doing and they fully support it and make it clear they want to help you achieve it. Our first champion was this type. From the moment he signed up, he provided a great deal of feedback and constructive critiques and has always done so in a truly supportive way. But they don't always just appear. You might need to groom these folks. They might prove themselves over time by consistent participation. Remember to foster these relationships. Ask for their opinion whenever possible. It's very likely that this person is or will become a champion. The hawker, also known as the link dropper. We've all seen this one. The person who just dropped by to help, but can't seem to stop littering the conversation with links to their eBay site, where they just happen to be selling something maybe slightly related to the conversation. Have a clear policy against crass commercialism in your community and strictly enforce it. Incorporate this policy into your flagging system if you can, as we do here on Get Satisfaction. Community members like calling out people who are simply there to advertise. They see it as a conversation pollution. Encourage everyone to report hawkers. The newbie. This type of customer may never have participated in an online community or may never have tried to get customer service in this new way. They may have found your community via organic search or through a widget that your company has put on their site. Or maybe they're not a newbie to online communities, but they're a newbie to your product or service and thus to your community. Either way, the key with newbies is to be patient and gracious with them. Get them comfortable in this new environment. If your product is technical and they're less technically savvy, helping them can get frustrating. Their issues may even be a result of user error. Regardless, it's important that they always feel heard and understood and not patronized. But you also want to teach them to fish, so to speak. Work with them so that they understand the role they need to play or the responsibility they need to take to solve their problem. This is potentially the beginning of a life cycle of a community member and maybe even of a customer. Of course, you may not turn a newbie into a repeat user of your community. Maybe they come in, get what they need, and leave. The thing to remember here, though, is that the benefit of giving them a great response and causing them to leave satisfied goes beyond just making that customer happy. It is seen by all other customers and potential customers who come across that interaction. So even if it's a customer's first post, treat it with care. The Ranger, the natural archiver, librarian, cataloger, and connector. They may participate in a number of different communities. They're good at keeping track of who knows what and connecting people with each other. The Ranger does a great job of not only answering other customers' questions and keeping on top of the ins and outs of a company's product, but also pulling more people into the conversation to help. The Ranger also usually has an uncanny ability to find a relevant topic, comment, or reply and reference it. The Ranger is certainly a potential champion. Dun dun dun, the Adversary. The Adversary is another subcategory of troll. Adversaries often attack both companies and other users. Their primary intent is to wreak havoc and provoke you and/or users into an emotional response. One difference between adversaries and stalkers is that while their online persona may not be their actual name, they do generally have an online persona and tend to stand behind it as their reputation and ego are tied up in it. A difference between the adversary and axe grinder is that they are generally never swayed. There's not really much point trying to change their mind. A good and civil response is still encouraged, especially since others will see it, but no need to go into depth with them. The adversary knows they're seen as the villain, and they actually enjoy it and promote this reputation. When you suspect someone of this kind of behavior, do your research and see if you can locate them misbehaving in other online communities. We all know how to ultimately deal with adversarial trolls. Don't engage them unnecessarily, and again, don't get dragged into an endless debate with them. If all they're doing is muckraking with clearly no intention of a productive contribution, it may even become necessary to have them banned once you've done your best to engage with them positively. And finally, that brings us to the Good Samaritan. These are some of your most valuable members. They're community gold. People like MDY in the Twitter community, who was a fantastic example of a Good Samaritan. She's made 6,598 replies, and they've been marked useful 1,144 times. These folks just seem to do it out of the goodness of their heart due to their passion for and knowledge of a given product or service. If you end up with a Good Samaritan or more in your community, count your blessings and give them a champion badge. Everyone seems to agree that about 10% of people in online communities are participating. Everyone else is just watching. Understandably, that 10% slice is important. The way you interact with them is going to encourage positive ongoing participation from them and is going to be seen by everyone else. When someone shows up in your community, you have no idea what kind of person they are or what their intentions are. Most actually start as lurkers. Once they start communicating and contributing, you can get a better sense. The goal for you as a community manager is to quickly spot the best potential community members and hold on to them. Give them reasons to stick around. One of the ways to do this is by how you've set the tone in your community and the social norms you've created by your own participation. You also want to keep your eye out for the potential troublemakers. Resist your first impulse to just censor them. That will only add fuel to their fire. And rather respond non-defensively without getting sucked into a vicious cycle with them. The best thing you can do is just equip yourself for dealing with them because they're an inevitable part of any community.